The Zarentine's alien bioweapon was loose on Earth. Death stalked humankind, and only Russell Roberts could save them from the apocalypse. The urgent message came through Roberts' neural implant as he kicked back a shot of whiskey in a dingy bar. "Code Scarlet, report to CENTCOM immediately." He slammed the shot glass on the counter and rushed out. At the secret government facility, intel reports scrolled across holoscreens detailing the dire threat. The Zarentine extremist Jackson had smuggled a viral bioweapon to Earth. His alien terrorists planned to detonate it in multiple cities, unleashing a global plague that could wipe out half of humanity. Roberts gritted his teeth. "What do we know about these Zarentine bastards?" A Xeno intel officer brought up a dossier. The Zarentine view humans as an inferior species. Jackson's followers call for our eradication. They've got cloaking tech that lets them appear human and blend in with the population. Roberts pinched his brow. Alien infiltrators with an apocalyptic agenda. Fan-fucking-tastic. What's our plan to stop them? The director of Terran Defense regarded him gravely. "You're being placed in command of a joint task force to hunt them down. Jack Thompson, our top xenobiologist, will help track the bioweapon. Michael Chen, the agency's best tech specialist, will be on hand to deal with their cloaking devices and other alien tech." Roberts nodded. "I'll need our most lethal operatives and cutting-edge gear. This is a race against time." He assembled his team, and they hit the ground running, kicking down doors and chasing leads. Security feeds showed disguised Zarentine moving equipment to a warehouse. Roberts led a tactical strike team to raid it. They blasted through the doors, pulse rifles ready, but found only dusty crates and remnants of alien tech. The Zarentine were one step ahead, always on the move. Roberts pounded a fist against the wall. They couldn't afford any more dead ends, not with millions of lives on the line. "Double down on the intel analysis, expand surveillance, dig up any contacts that might have a bead on these alien fucks. We're not stopping until we catch them." His team worked around the clock, poring over data and reports. A pattern started to emerge. The terrorists were consolidating components for the bioweapon. The attack was imminent. Roberts narrowed his eyes at the blinking map of potential targets. They had to find the Zarentine's new hideout before those alien psychos unleashed hell on Earth. Humanity's survival depended on it. The clock was ticking, and Russell Roberts would be damned if he let those Zarentine bastards win. The breakthrough came like a lightning strike. Roberts' team intercepted a coded Zarentine transmission that made their pulses race. Intel specialists decrypted the message, revealing a gold mine. Jackson, the Zarentine mastermind himself, planned to personally oversee the final preparation and detonation of the bioweapon. Roberts clenched his fist. This was their chance. Capture Jackson, cut the head off the snake, and cripple the entire Zarentine terror operation in one fell swoop. The intel pointed to a decommissioned industrial complex on the city's outskirts. Roberts rallied his team, Jack Thompson, Michael Chen, and a hardened assault squad. They geared up, checked their weapons, and piled into armored vehicles. Roberts knew Jackson had chosen that secluded location to avoid prying eyes while he armed the bioweapon for imminent mass slaughter. As they approached the complex, Roberts spotted Zarentine guards prowling the perimeter, their alien weapons glinting under the harsh floodlights. Jackson was here all right. Chen tapped on his tablet and gave a thumbs up. The guards' comms were jammed. Roberts and the assault squad burst from the vehicles, pulse rifles crackling. They dropped the sentries with ruthless efficiency, blue bolts searing through the night. The outer compound was secure. Roberts motioned to the looming main building. Jackson was holed up inside like a rat in a maze. The team stacked up, placed a breaching charge, and blew the reinforced door off its hinges. They stormed in, flashlights piercing the gloom. Jackson's fanatical followers swarmed to meet them, screeching war cries. Zarentine warriors, eyes burning with hate, charged with electro blades. Roberts and his men opened fire, mowing them down in tight, controlled bursts. The human soldiers outmatched the Zarentine in sheer tactical skill and superior firepower. Grenades chewed through alien bodies. Pulse rounds found their marks. The floor grew slick with blood and gore. Roberts and his team pushed forward implacably. They shredded the Zarantine ranks and cornered Jackson in his lab. The terrorist leader was hunched over the bioweapon, preparing to arm it. Jackson snatched up the canister, his clawed finger hovering over the release mechanism. "Come any closer, and I unleash this plague on your pathetic world!" he shrieked. Roberts trained his pulse rifle on Jackson's scaly head, his aim unwavering. "Drop the canister. It's over, Jackson. You've got nowhere to run." Thompson stepped up beside Roberts and yelled to the alien. "Genocide is not the answer, Jackson. Is this carnage truly what you want?" Jackson sneered. "You humans are a disease that must be purged from the galaxy. Your extinction is a righteous necessity." While Roberts and Thompson kept Jackson engaged, Chen worked frantically on his tablet, his fingers flying over the screen. He was hacking the bioweapon's electronic lock, fighting to disable the device. Roberts fixed Jackson with a piercing stare. "You underestimate humanity's purpose, Jackson. We don't cower before threats. We unite, we fight, and we prevail." Around them, the broken bodies of Jackson's followers littered the lab, twisted and oozing. The futility of his hate-fueled crusade hung in the air. Jackson's eyes darted wildly, desperation etched on his face. His finger twitched over the trigger. The world held its breath. At the last possible second, Chen let out a triumphant shout. "Got it! The fail-safes are bypassed! The canister is neutralized!" Jackson roared in fury and despair. His ultimate attempt had failed. Roberts squeezed the trigger, the pulse round piercing Jackson's shoulder with pinpoint accuracy. The Zarantine warlord collapsed, the useless canister clattering from his hand. As the task force secured Jackson and called in the bioweapon disposal unit, Roberts allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They had done it. The alien mastermind was in custody, his weapon dismantled, his terror cell crippled. Humanity had stared into the abyss of annihilation and emerged unbroken. But even as the adrenaline ebbed, Roberts knew this was no ending. It was one victory in an ongoing war. The Zarantine extremists would surely regroup, lash out with renewed fervor. Eternal vigilance was the watchword now. Earth must remain forever guarded against the next existential threat. Russell Roberts had won this battle. But the fight to defend humanity's future was nowhere near the end. Roberts stared at Jackson through the one-way glass of the interrogation room. The Zarantine leader sat motionless, his alien features twisted in defiance. "He's not talking," Thompson said, frustration evident in his voice. Roberts nodded grimly. "Time to turn up the heat." He entered the room, slamming the door behind him. Jackson didn't flinch. "The bioweapon's neutralized. Your followers are dead or in custody. It's over, Jackson. Start talking." Silence. Roberts leaned in close, his voice low and dangerous. "We have ways of making you talk. Painful ways. Is that what you want?" Hours passed. Roberts and his team employed every interrogation technique in the book: sleep deprivation, sensory manipulation, psychological pressure. Finally, Jackson broke. "You fools," he spat. "The bioweapon was a distraction. Our real plan is already in motion." Roberts felt his blood run cold. "What plan?" Jackson's alien mouth curved into a cruel smile. "We're inside your governments. Key positions. Decades of infiltration. Earth will fall from within." Roberts burst out of the interrogation room, his mind racing. He immediately contacted the highest levels of government, relaying Jackson's confession. An emergency meeting was convened. Military leaders, intelligence chiefs, and government officials crowded into a secure briefing room. "Gentlemen, we have a crisis," Roberts began. He laid out the situation: Zarantine agents in positions of power, manipulating policy and weakening Earth's defenses. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. "How do we root them out?" demanded the Secretary of Defense. Roberts stepped forward. "I have a plan. A covert operation to expose and neutralize the infiltrators. I'll need a hand-picked team and full autonomy." After heated debate, Roberts got the green light. He assembled his team: Thompson, Chen, and a select group of operatives he trusted with his life. They worked around the clock, sifting through mountains of data, surveillance footage, financial records, communication logs. Slowly, patterns emerged. Roberts pointed to a map covered in red markers. These are our confirmed Zarantine agents. We take them down hard and fast. The team sprang into action. They raided offices, made arrests, and engaged in firefights with cornered aliens. Each successful operation brought them closer to unraveling the full extent of the infiltration. But the Zarantine weren't going down without a fight. Roberts and his team faced ambushes, booby traps, and fierce resistance. During a raid on a government facility, Roberts noticed something off about one of his operatives. The man's movements were too rigid, his speech patterns subtly wrong. Roberts' instincts screamed danger. He tackled the operative just as the man reached for a concealed weapon. They grappled fiercely, Roberts struggling against inhuman strength. "We have a mole!" Roberts shouted, finally subduing the disguised Zarantine. The traitor was interrogated, revealing the true scope of the alien plot. Roberts learned of a plan to seize Earth's nuclear arsenals and communication networks. "We're running out of time," Roberts told his team. "We need to take out the remaining infiltrators before they can act." They launched a series of lightning raids across the globe. Roberts led from the front, his pulse rifle cracking as they stormed Zarantine strongholds. The final confrontation came in an underground bunker. Roberts faced off against the Zarantine sleeper cell leader, a vicious close-quarters fight. The alien reached for a device, some kind of fail-safe trigger. Roberts lunged, smashing the alien's wrist and sending the device skittering across the floor. A swift blow to the head, and the Zarantine leader crumpled. In the aftermath, Roberts oversaw the roundup of the remaining infiltrators. He knew the war was just getting started, but humanity had won a crucial battle. As he watched the sun rise over the city, Roberts' heart made with commitment. Whatever came next, he'd be ready. Earth's survival depended on it. Roberts stared at the intel reports spread across the briefing room table. His heart made. The captured Zarantine infiltrators had spilled their guts, revealing a threat far greater than they'd imagined. "Zartok," he muttered, tasting the alien name like bile. A warlord with an invasion fleet aimed right at Earth. Thompson cleared his throat. "Sir, I've analyzed the data on Zartok's capabilities. It's not good." Roberts nodded grimly. "Let's hear it." Thompson pulled up a holographic display, showcasing alien weapon schematics and troop formations. Advanced energy weapons, biosynthetic armor, ships that can outmaneuver anything in our fleet, and that's just what we know about. Chen piped up from his workstation, fingers flying over multiple screens. "I'm making progress on pinpointing the coordinates of Zartok's base. It's deep in uncharted space, but I think I can crack it." Roberts paced the room, mind racing. Earth's military leaders watched him expectantly through the vid screens lining the walls. He knew what had to be done. "Gentlemen," he addressed the assembled brass, "we're facing an existential threat. Zartok knows our weaknesses thanks to those sleeper agents. If we wait for him to strike, it'll be too late." He laid out his audacious plan. A strike force. A covert mission to infiltrate Zartok's base and cripple the invasion before it could begin. Heated debate erupted among the military leaders. "It's suicide," one general protested. "It's our only shot," Roberts countered. After tense deliberation, they gave him the green light. Roberts wasted no time assembling his team. He handpicked the best of the best, hardened veterans, ace pilots, brilliant scientists. They'd need every ounce of skill and courage for what lay ahead. Weeks of grueling training followed. Roberts drove his team relentlessly, honing them into a perfectly synchronized unit. Chen worked miracles with salvaged Zarantine tech, developing cloaking systems and hacking tools that might give them an edge. Finally, the day arrived. Roberts stood before his strike force in the hangar bay of their stealth ship. "This is it," he said, his voice steady. "Everything we've fought for comes down to this mission. We're all that stands between Earth and annihilation." He met each of their eyes in turn. "I won't lie. Our odds aren't good, but I've seen what this team can do. Together, we're going to save our world." With a collective nod of dedication, They boarded the ship. As the bay doors opened to the star-flecked void, Roberts took a deep breath. "Initiating stealth systems," the pilot reported. "Course laid in for Zarantine space." "Take us out," Roberts ordered. The ship glided silently into the abyss, carrying humanity's last hope into the heart of enemy territory. Their journey through Zarantine-controlled space was fraught with tension. Massive patrol ships passed within meters of their cloaked vessel, alien sensors probing the void. Roberts held his breath each time, knowing a single misstep meant certain doom. At last, they reached the outskirts of Zartok's base, a planet-sized fortress filled with weapon emplacements and swarming with ships. "My God," Thompson whispered as they took in the sight. Roberts steeled himself. "Stick to the plan. Chen, you're up." Chen's fingers danced across his console, deploying an array of stealthed sensor drones. They wove through the defensive grid, mapping a path through the minefield of detectors and automated turrets. "I've got a blind spot," Chen reported after tense minutes. "Sending coordinates now." The pilot guided their ship through the impossible gauntlet with preternatural skill. Alarms blared as they barely avoided colliding with cloaked mines and ghosted past proximity sensors. They touched down in a maintenance bay, the ship's hull still vibrating from the nerve-wracking descent. Roberts checked his pulse rifle. "Masks on. Remember your training. We move fast and quiet." They exited the ship in full stealth gear, alien atmosphere hissing against their suits. Roberts led the way, each step calculated. They encountered their first Zarantine patrol in a side corridor. Roberts raised his fist, halting the team. The aliens passed within arm's reach, oblivious to the human intruders. Once clear, they pressed on. Their luck couldn't hold. Rounding a corner, they came face to face with a squad of Zarantine soldiers. For a heartbeat, both sides froze in shock. Then all hell broke loose. Roberts dove for cover as energy bolts sizzled past. "Contact!" he bellowed, returning fire. His team reacted instantly, falling into practiced formations. The close-quarters firefight was brutal and chaotic. Zarantine reinforcements poured in, but the humans held their ground. Robert's pulse rifle spat blue fire, dropping alien after alien. "Push forward!" he roared over the din. They fought their way through the corridors, leaving a trail of Zarantine bodies in their wake. Finally, they reached the central command hub. Chen rushed to a console, jacking in his hacking suite. "I'm in their systems, uploading the virus now." Alarms wailed. The doors burst open and a towering figure strode in, flanked by elite guards. Zartok himself. The Zarantine warlord was a monster of muscle and armor, easily twice Roberts' size. He bellowed a war cry and charged. Roberts met the alien head-on, narrowly dodging a blow that would have pulverized him. They traded furious blows, Roberts' human agility against Zartok's raw power. The rest of the team held off the guards, buying Roberts time. He feinted left, then struck like a viper at a weak point in Zartok's armor. The alien howled in pain and fury. Roberts pressed his advantage, raining blows on the staggered warlord. With a final, decisive strike, he sent Zartok crashing to the ground. "Virus uploaded!" Chen shouted triumphantly. "Their systems are going haywire!" Roberts yanked Chen away from the console. "Time to go!" They fled through the disintegrating base, alarms blaring and explosions rocking the structure. They piled into their ship as the hangar bay crumbled around them. The pilot gunned the engines, blasting them free of the doomed fortress. Behind them, Zartok's invasion fleet hung dead in space, disabled by Chen's virus. As they rocketed back toward Earth, Roberts allowed himself a small smile. They'd done it. They'd saved humanity. For now. The thunderous roar of engines filled the air as Roberts' ship touched down on Earth. Crowds of cheering humans packed the landing zone, waving flags and holding up homemade signs. Roberts stepped out onto the ramp, squinting in the bright sunlight. His team followed, their faces a mix of exhaustion and relief. A wall of sound hit them as they descended. "Roberts! Roberts!" The chant echoed across the tarmac. Hands reached out, patting them on the back, shaking their hands. Roberts managed a tired smile and a wave. The celebration was cut short. General Hawkins pushed through the throng, his face grim. He gripped Roberts' arm and leaned in close. "We need to talk. Now." Minutes later, Roberts found himself in a secure briefing room. The euphoria of victory faded as he absorbed the intel scrolling across the screens. "SOCOD," Roberts muttered, studying the alien's features. "I remember him. One of Jackson's most fanatical followers." Hawkins nodded. "He's gone off the deep end. Makes Jackson look reasonable by comparison." Roberts' eyes widened as he read the details of SOCOD's plan. "Zardonite? Christ, if he pulls this off." "Exactly," Hawkins said. "We're looking at the obliteration of major population centers. Millions dead in an instant." Roberts stood, his muscles protesting after weeks in space. "I'll need Thompson and Chen, and anyone else from the team who's still combat ready." Hawkins raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're up for this? You just got back." Roberts met his gaze. "With all due respect, sir, we don't have time for R&R. Not with SOCOD out there." The next hours passed in a blur of planning and preparation. Roberts assembled his core team in the war room, laying out what they knew. "It's a race against time," he told them, gesturing to a holographic display of potential targets. "We find SOCOD's stockpile and neutralize it before he can deploy." Chen raised his hand. "Sir, I might have a way to track their comms. It's risky, but—" "Do it," Roberts ordered. "Whatever it takes." Days later, they had their breakthrough. Chen burst into Roberts' office, datapad in hand. "Got it. Encrypted transmissions from an asteroid base. Has to be where they're keeping the Zardonite." Roberts studied the coordinates, his pulse quickening. "Prep the team. We move in an hour." Their stealth ship glided through the asteroid field, sensors on high alert. Roberts peered out the viewport at the pockmarked surface of their target. "There," Thompson pointed. "That formation has to be an entrance." Roberts nodded. "Take us in. Nice and slow." They touched down without incident, but that's where their luck ran out. The moment they breached the airlock, alarms blared. Zarantine guards poured out of side passages, energy weapons blazing. Roberts dove for cover, the smell of ozone filling his nostrils as bolts of blue fire streaked past. He popped up, squeezing off short bursts from his rifle. 2 Zarantine went down, writhing. "Push forward!" he shouted. His team responded instantly, laying down suppressing fire as they advanced deeper into the complex. The fighting was brutal, close-quarters combat through twisting corridors. Roberts lost track of time, his world narrowing to the next target, the next threat. Finally, they reached the central chamber. A massive vault door stood before them, surrounded by blinking control panels. "Chen, you're up!" Roberts barked. The tech specialist darted forward, fingers flying over the alien interface. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked to disable the fail-safes. "Incoming!" Thompson yelled. A fresh wave of Zarantine poured in from a side passage. Thompson opened up with his heavy repeater, the staccato burst drowning out all other sound. Roberts provided covering fire, his rifle clicking empty. He cursed, slamming in a fresh magazine. "Chen, how much longer?" "Almost. Got it!" The vault door hissed open. Roberts allowed himself a moment of triumph. Then a massive figure stepped out, towering over them all. SOCOD. The Zarantine leader's eyes locked onto Roberts. With a roar of hatred, he charged. Roberts barely had time to raise his rifle before SOCOD was on him. A vicious backhand sent the weapon flying. Roberts stumbled back, barely avoiding a follow-up blow that would have caved in his chest. They traded punches, neither giving ground. Roberts' ribs screamed in protest as SOCOD landed a solid hit. He tasted blood in his mouth. With a desperate surge of strength, Roberts feinted left, then drove his knee up into SOCOD's midsection. The alien doubled over. Roberts seized the opportunity, raining down blows until SOCOD collapsed. Panting, Roberts staggered back. "Chen, the charges—" Chen nodded, setting the demolition explosives with shaking hands. "Time to go," Roberts gasped. They sprinted for their ship, the complex shuddering around them. They blasted free of the asteroid just as the first explosions tore through its core. Roberts sagged in his seat, every part of him aching. He looked around at his battered team. Not everyone had made it. The victory felt hollow. Days later, he lay in a hospital bed, watching news footage of the crowd celebrating their return. The Zardonite threat had been neutralized. Earth was safe, for now. But as the painkillers pulled him toward sleep, Roberts knew the fight was far from finished. Somewhere out there, the remnants of Sakat's forces were regrouping, planning. They'd be back. And when they came, Roberts would be ready. Roberts jerked awake, his body drenched in sweat. The stark white ceiling of the medical bay swam into focus as he blinked away the remnants of his nightmare. His ribs ached with each breath, a constant reminder of his recent battle. A gentle hand touched his arm. "Easy there, sir," said the nurse. "Your body's still healing." Roberts nodded, wincing as he sat up. "How long have I been out?" 3 days, she replied, checking his vitals. "General Hawkins asked to be notified when you woke. He said it was urgent." 30 minutes later, Roberts stood in the command center, his legs still unsteady. Hawkins's face was grim as he brought up a holographic display. "We've got a situation," Hawkins said, his voice tight. "New intel just came in. It's not good." Roberts studied the data scrolling past, his stomach clenching. "Vorak," he muttered. "Jackson's old attack dog." Hawkins nodded. "He's taken control of a splinter faction, and he's got his hands on something nasty." The display shifted, showing a massive space station nestled in a swirling nebula. Roberts leaned closer, ignoring the protest from his ribs. "That's a Zarantine bio research facility," he said. "I thought we'd taken them all out." "So did we," Hawkins replied. "This one was decommissioned, hidden in the Craxus Nebula. Vorax repurposed it. They're manufacturing a new pathogen, deadlier than anything we've seen before." Roberts absorbed the implications, his mind racing. "We need to hit it, fast and hard." Hawkins nodded. "I'm giving you full autonomy on this one. Assemble your team." Hours later, Roberts stood before a familiar group of faces. Thompson and Chen flanked him, their expressions grim. "You've all been briefed," Roberts said, his voice steady. "This is a straight insertion. We go in quiet, neutralize the threat, and get out. Chen, talk to me about those nanites." Chen stepped forward, holding up a small vial. "Latest prototype," he said. "Designed to disrupt the station's systems and scramble the pathogen's molecular structure. Should render it inert." Roberts nodded. "Good work. Let's move out." Their stealth ship cut through the inky blackness of space, the Craxus Nebula looming before them. Massive clouds of ionized gas swirled and pulsed, bathing the cockpit in an eerie glow. "Entering the nebula now," the pilot reported. "Visibility dropping." Roberts gripped the back of the pilot's chair as the ship bucked and shuddered. Outside, tendrils of energy crackled across the view screen. "Ionic storm," Thompson muttered. "It's wreaking havoc with our sensors." A proximity alarm blared. Chen's fingers danced across his console. "Zarantine early warning buoy," he said. "I've got it jammed, but they might have picked us up." Robert's eyebrows furrowed. "Push through. We're too close to turn back now." The station loomed before them, a massive construct of alien metal and pulsing energy fields. Roberts led the way as they exited the ship, their boots clanging on the metal deck of the airlock. "Chen, get that door open," Roberts ordered. "Thompson, watch our 6. Chen worked his magic on the alien control panel. With a hiss of escaping air, the inner door slid open. Roberts raised his weapon and stepped through. The corridor beyond was dimly lit, alien script scrolling across holographic displays. They moved silently, every sense on high alert. A door slid open ahead. Roberts raised his fist, halting the team. A pair of Zarantine guards rounded the corner, chittering to each other in their guttural language. Time seemed to slow. Roberts saw the moment recognition dawned in the alien's compound eyes. He squeezed the trigger of his pulse rifle, a burst of blue energy lancing out. The first guard went down, a smoking hole in its carapace. The second managed to let out a shriek before Thompson's shot silenced it permanently. Alarms blared. Roberts cursed. "So much for stealth. Move!" They sprinted down the corridor, the sound of pounding feet echoing behind them. Energy bolts sizzled past, leaving scorch marks on the walls. "There!" Chen shouted, pointing to a reinforced door. "That has to be the main lab." Roberts laid down covering fire as Chen worked on the door controls. More Zarantine poured in from side passages, their alien weapons spitting death. The door slid open. "Go!" Roberts bellowed. They piled through, Thompson slamming the emergency lockdown as soon as they were clear. The sounds of battle faded, replaced by the hum of alien machinery. Roberts took in the cavernous lab, his eyes widening. Banks of gene sequencers lined the walls, vats of bubbling liquid dominating the center of the room. Zarantine technicians scrambled for weapons. "Chen, deploy the nanites," Roberts shouted. "Thompson, with me." Roberts and Thompson moved as one, years of combat experience evident in every fluid motion. They cleared the room with brutal efficiency, pulse rifles spitting blue fire. Chen worked frantically at a control station, uploading his nanotech countermeasures. "Almost there," he called out. "Just need another minute." A massive explosion rocked the station. The far wall of the lab blew inward in a shower of twisted metal and alien bodies. Through the smoke strode a towering figure, flanked by heavily armed guards. Its carapace was augmented with cybernetic implants, eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. Vorak had arrived. The Zarantine leader's gaze locked onto Roberts. With a roar that shook the very air, he charged. Roberts barely had time to dive aside as Vorak barreled past, smashing through equipment like it was made of paper. The alien spun with impossible speed, a massive claw lashing out. Roberts felt ribs crack as the blow sent him flying. He slammed into a control panel, stars exploding across his vision. Through the haze of pain, he saw Thompson and the others engaged in a desperate firefight with Vorak's guards. Vorak loomed over him, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Roberts gritted his teeth and surged to his feet, ignoring the screaming protest of his battered body. "Come on, you oversized bug," he snarled. "Let's finish this." Human and alien clashed in a blur of movement. Roberts ducked and weaved, his smaller size allowing him to avoid Vorak's earth-shattering blows. He struck when he could, targeting weak points in the Zarantine's armor. A psychic blast from Vorak sent Roberts reeling, his mind afire with alien presence. He pushed back, years of mental conditioning allowing him to rally. "Chen!" he shouted. "Status!" "Nanites deployed!" Chen called back. "The pathogen's breaking down!" Vorak let out a bellow of rage. With terrifying speed, he lashed out, his claw closing around Roberts's throat. Roberts gasped for air as Vorak lifted him off his feet. "You've lost, human," Vorak hissed in accented English. "Your species will be purged from the galaxy." Roberts met the alien's gaze, a defiant smile on his lips. "Not today," he wheezed. With the last of his strength, Roberts brought up his pulse rifle and fired point-blank into Vorak's face. The Zarantine's head exploded in a spray of ichor and cybernetics. Roberts fell to the ground, gulping in precious air. Around him, the sounds of battle were fading. Thompson helped him to his feet. "We did it," Thompson said. "The pathogen's neutralized." A new alarm cut through the air. Chen's face went pale as he studied a nearby console. "Vorak activated the reactor overload," he said. "This whole place is going to blow." Robert staggered towards the exit. "Everybody out! Move!" They ran through the collapsing station, dodging falling debris and pockets of escaping gas. Roberts brought up the rear, making sure his team stayed ahead. They piled into their ship just as the first explosions rocked the hangar bay. The pilot gunned the engines, blasting them free of the doomed station. Behind them, the Craxus facility erupted in a massive fireball, quickly swallowed by the swirling nebula. In the ship's medbay, Roberts winced as a medic tended to his injuries. Chen lay on a nearby bed, burns covering much of his body. Status report, Roberts said. Thompson's face was grim. We dealt Vorak's faction a major blow, he said. But what? Roberts asked. Intel suggests Vorak managed to disperse some of the pathogen before we arrived, Thompson replied. It's not much, but it's out there, spreading. Roberts closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command settle on his shoulders once more. The war wasn't over. It might never be over. Plot a course for Earth, he said. We need to... Roberts stood at the helm of the command ship, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of Theta Prime. Red dots representing infection hotspots multiplied across the colony's surface at an alarming rate. Thompson status report, he barked into the comm. Jack Thompson's voice crackled through, tension evident. Sir, it's spreading faster than we can contain. Chen's nanites are barely slowing it down. We need to evacuate now. Roberts clenched his fist. Understood. Initiate Protocol Omega. Get everyone off that rock. He watched as evacuation ships swarmed the colony's surface. Desperate civilians clambered aboard, many showing signs of infection. Roberts knew some wouldn't survive the journey. Sir, a young officer approached, datapad in hand. We have reports of outbreaks on Calston, Arcadia, and Perrin V. Roberts cursed under his breath. Thompson, redirect to Calston. I'm heading to Perrin 5 myself. Hours later, Roberts' shuttle touched down on Perrin V's main landing pad. The stench of decay and disinfectant assaulted his nostrils as he stepped out, fully encased in a hazard suit. Gunfire echoed in the distance. Roberts activated his comm. Chen, what's the situation? Not good. Chen's voice was strained. The governor's gone rogue. He's shooting infected civilians on sight. Roberts moved through the streets, passing piles of bodies awaiting incineration. A woman, clutching a child, ran toward him, her eyes wild with fear. Please help us, she screamed. They're killing everyone. Before Roberts could respond, a shot rang out. The woman crumpled, her child wailing beneath her. Roberts spun, weapon raised. A squad of the governor's men approached, guns trained on him. Stand down, Roberts roared. I'm Commander Russell Roberts, Earth Defense Force. The squad leader hesitated. Sir, we have orders. Anyone showing symptoms? Your orders are void, Roberts cut him off. This is a containment operation now. We evacuate who we can and sanitize the rest from orbit. Reluctantly, the squad lowered their weapons. Roberts tapped his comm. Chen, I need those nanites here now. We're losing Perrin V. Days blurred together as Roberts fought a losing battle across multiple worlds. On Arcadia, Chen's nanites stemmed the tide, but at a terrible cost. A third of the population lay dead or dying. Then came the news that shook Roberts to his core. A derelict ship had crash-landed on Terra Nova, Earth's crowning achievement in colonization. The pathogen tore through its densely packed cities like wildfire. Roberts stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the beautiful blue-green orb of Terra Nova. His next words felt like ashes in his mouth. Initiate full quarantine, he ordered. Nothing gets on or off that planet. He watched as the mighty guns of Earth's fleet turned on their own people, ready to vaporize any ship that dared to flee. Chen, Roberts' voice was heavy. Tell me you have something. I think so. Chen sounded exhausted. A nanotech virus to target the pathogen's ability to mutate. But sir, it's untested. The risks don't matter anymore. Roberts cut him off. We're out of options. Deploy it. Everywhere. Roberts watched the monitors as Chen's last-ditch effort was unleashed across infected worlds. Reports trickled in. Infection rates dropping on Arcadia, stabilizing on Calston. But the death toll kept rising. Millions dead with millions more infected. Roberts knew the war was nowhere near the end. He stared at the casualty reports, each number a weight on his conscience. A junior officer approached, hesitant. Sir, we have new reports of outbreaks in the Centauri system. Roberts closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and turned to face the next battle. Roberts stared at the holographic display, his eyes burning from lack of sleep. The nanotech countermeasure had worked, but at a terrible cost. Billions of tiny green dots representing survivors flickered across the galaxy map, dwarfed by the vast swaths of red indicating the dead and infected. A priority transmission cut through his dark thoughts. "Commander Roberts," a stern voice crackled. "Your presence is required on Earth immediately. The United Earth Federation has convened a special tribunal." Roberts pursed his lips. He'd known this was coming, but facing it was another matter entirely. As his ship entered Earth's orbit, he saw the crowds gathered outside UEF headquarters. Their angry chants echoed through the streets. "Murderer! Justice for Terra Nova! Down with Roberts!" Security forces created a corridor for Roberts to pass through. A rotten piece of fruit splattered against his uniform. He walked on, stone-faced. Inside the tribunal chamber, Roberts stood tall as the charges were read. Admiral Hawthorne, a vocal critic, leaned forward. "Commander Roberts, you stand accused of gross negligence resulting in the deaths of millions. How do you plead?" Roberts met the Admiral's gaze. "Not guilty. I did what was necessary to save humanity." The crowd erupted. Roberts endured hours of questioning, his decisions picked apart and scrutinized. Finally, Thompson and Chen took the stand. "Without Commander Roberts' actions," Chen stated firmly, "we'd be facing extinction, not debating ethics." Thompson nodded. "The commander made impossible choices in impossible situations. We're alive because of those choices." As the tribunal dragged on, Roberts sensed a shift in the room. Some of the hardliners seemed less certain, while moderates nodded in agreement with his defenders. Leaving the chamber that evening, Roberts barely registered the glint of metal in his peripheral vision. A searing pain tore through his side as a plasma bolt grazed him. Security swarmed, tackling the assailant, a human collaborator working with Zarantine forces. Roberts pressed a hand to his wound, his mind racing. The attack was bold, desperate. What were the Zarantine planning? Weeks later, his injury still aching, Roberts pored over intelligence reports. A pattern emerged, seemingly random attacks and data breaches all pointing to one terrifying conclusion. "They've found it," he breathed, cold dread settling in his stomach. The reality distortion array. Roberts assembled his team. "We have confirmation," he began. "The Zarantine have obtained schematics for a doomsday weapon capable of wiping out entire star systems. We're hitting their black site in the Kuvexta system. Gear up." Their stealth ships slipped past the outer defenses of the Zarantine facility. Roberts led the assault team through twisting corridors, pulse rifles spitting blue fire as they encountered resistance. Alien shrieks and the hiss of energy weapons filled the air. They fought their way deeper into the complex, Chen working furiously to hack security systems. A massive blast door slowly ground open, revealing the heart of the facility. Inside, a towering Zarantine commander turned to face them, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. "Commander Roberts!" it hissed in accented English. "You're too late." Roberts raised his weapon. "What do you mean?" The alien's compound eyes gleamed. "The array is already under construction. Soon your pitiful species will be erased from existence." Roberts fired, the alien's exoskeleton shattering under the barrage. As it fell, Roberts turned to his team. "Download everything. We need to find that array." Minutes later, they were back on their ship, sirens wailing behind them as they broke atmosphere. Chen's face was grim as he analyzed the data. "Sir," he said, "the array, it's beyond anything we've seen. Once activated, it'll create a shock wave that'll annihilate every human system in its path. We can't evacuate fast enough." Robert stared out at the stars, his mind racing. They'd come so far, sacrificed so much. He couldn't let it end like this. "Plot a course," he ordered, his voice steel. "We're taking the fight to them. It's time to end this, once and for all." Robert stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, his eyes fixed on the swirling chaos of the Ixar void ahead. The uncharted expanse stretched before them, a treacherous maze of spatial anomalies and gravitational eddies. "Chen, status report," Roberts barked, his voice taut with tension. Chen's fingers flew across his console. Nav systems are struggling, sir. The void's distorting our sensors. I'm implementing adaptive algorithms to compensate. Thompson manned the weapons station, his face grim. Multiple contacts on long-range scanners. Zarantine raiders closing fast. Roberts leaned forward. Evasive maneuvers. Prepare for combat. The Defiant lurched as alien energy bolts slammed into their shields. Roberts gripped his chair as the ship banked hard, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma torpedoes. Return fire, Roberts ordered. Thompson's hands danced across the weapons console. The Defiant's pulse cannons roared to life, spitting blue fire into the void. A Zarantine raider erupted in a silent explosion, its debris scattering into the cosmic winds. Chen shouted over the din of battle. Sir, we've got bigger problems. Massive ionic storm dead ahead. Roberts watched as a wall of crackling energy filled the view screen. Can we go around? Negative, Chen replied. It's too vast. We'll lose days if we divert course. Roberts hardened his face. Then we go through. All hands, brace for impact. The Defiant plunged into the maelstrom. Arcs of energy lashed the hull, overloading systems and sending cascades of sparks erupting from consoles. Chen worked feverishly, rerouting power and implementing makeshift shielding protocols on the fly. Shields failing, Thompson yelled. Hull integrity at 62% and dropping. Roberts felt the ship shudder beneath him. Chen, we need those nav systems. Working on it, Chen shouted back, sweat beading on his forehead. Rerouting power from non-essential systems, implementing quantum stabilizers to counteract the ionic interference. For agonizing minutes, the Defiant bucked and heaved through the cosmic tempest. Then, suddenly, they burst free into clear space. A damage report, Roberts demanded. Thompson's voice was grim. We're hurt bad, sir. Weapons systems at 40% capacity. Shields barely functional. Roberts nodded, his eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of the Zarantine shipyard. It'll have to do. Initiate stealth protocols and begin passive scans of the facility. As they drew closer, the true scale of the Zarantine defenses became apparent. Massive gun platforms bristled with energy weapons. Swarms of hunter-killer drones patrolled in intricate patterns. Minefields stretched as far as the eye could see. Roberts studied the tactical display, his mind racing. A frontal assault would be suicide, he muttered. Chen spoke up. Sir, I've detected a weak point in their sensor grid. If we time it right, we might be able to slip through undetected. Roberts nodded. Do it. Prep the infiltration team. We're going in. Minutes later, Roberts stood in the transporter room with Thompson and Chen, clad in advanced stealth suits. The air crackled with tension as they stepped onto the pad. Remember, Roberts said, his voice low, our window is narrow. We get in, disable the array, and get out. Failure is not an option. The transporter hummed to life. Roberts felt the familiar tingle of dematerialization. In a flash of light, they vanished from the Defiant. They rematerialized in the heart of the Zarantine facility, surrounded by alien technology and hostile forces. Before the Zarantine techs could react, Roberts and his team sprang into action. Roberts' pulse rifle spat blue fire, cutting down 2 guards before they could raise the alarm. Thompson moved with brutal efficiency, his combat knife finding gaps in Zarantine armor. Chen sprinted for the central console, fingers flying as he began to hack the array's systems. A massive figure loomed before them, Vokath, the Zarantine overlord. His cybernetic enhancements glowed with malevolent energy as he charged towards Roberts and Thompson. For humanity, Roberts roared, meeting the alien's charge head-on. Roberts stood before the viewport, his eyes fixed on the swirling maelstrom of stars as the UES Defiant hurtled through hyperspace. The ship's engines thrummed beneath his feet, a constant reminder of their desperate mission. Coming out of hyperspace in 5, 4, 3, Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. The starfield blurred, then snapped back into focus. Robert's breath caught in his throat. Before them loomed a massive planet, its surface a patchwork of bruised purples and sickly greens. Orbiting the world was a fleet unlike anything he'd ever seen, a twisted mockery of Zarantine ships, their hulls warped and pulsing with an unnatural energy. "My God," Roberts whispered, "what have they done to themselves?" Chen's fingers flew across his console. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Roberts turned to face the bridge crew. "This is it. Everything we've fought for comes down to this moment. Signal the fleet. All ships to battle stations." The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Roberts felt the ship shudder as weapon systems came online. On the tactical display, he watched as the combined armada of humanity and its uneasy allies moved into formation. A priority communication flashed on his screen. The face of Sulvath Imperator Jorek filled the display, his scaled features set in a grim expression. "Commander Roberts," the alien's voice rumbled, "my ships stand ready. Let us hope this alliance holds." Roberts nodded. "For all our sakes, Imperator." As the transmission ended, alarms blared across the bridge. Chen's voice rang out, tinged with panic. "Sir, multiple contacts inbound. They're not normal ships." Roberts watched in horror as the enemy fleet surged forward. The twisted Zarantine vessels seemed to bend and warp as they moved, leaving trails of decaying space-time in their wake. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Roberts barked. "Concentrate fire on their lead vessels." The void erupted in a cacophony of weapons fire. Lances of energy crisscrossed space, slamming into shields and hull plating. Roberts gripped his chair as the Defiant banked hard, narrowly avoiding a stream of corrosive energy that ate through the hull of a nearby cruiser. "Chen, what the hell are we dealing with?" Roberts demanded. Chen's face was pale as he studied his readouts. "It's some kind of entropic weapon, sir. Our shields are holding for now, but prolonged exposure." A massive explosion rocked the ship. Roberts stumbled, catching himself on a nearby console. "Halcyon battlecruiser Eternal Dawn is down," a tactical officer shouted. "Their reactor, it just dissolved." Roberts watched as more ships fell to the Zarantine onslaught. The entropic energy tore through hulls and shields alike, reducing mighty warships to drifting debris in seconds. "We can't win this in open space," Roberts muttered. He keyed the fleet-wide comm. "All ships, push through their lines. We take the fight to the surface." The Defiant's engines roared as Roberts led the charge. Ships exploded around them, caught in the crossfire of unimaginable weapons. As they plunged into the planet's atmosphere, Roberts caught glimpses of the surface below, a nightmarish landscape of twisting spires and pulsing organic technology. "Brace for impact," Roberts shouted as the Defiant shuddered and bucked. The ship slammed into the alien soil, skidding to a halt amidst a tangle of writhing vegetation. Roberts unstrapped himself, his body aching from the impact. "Status report." Chen coughed, waving away acrid smoke. "We're down, but primary systems are still online. Multiple hull breaches, but emergency force fields are holding." "Good enough," Roberts said, grabbing his pulse rifle. "Assemble the strike team. We end this now." As Roberts led his team down the Defiant's boarding ramp, he surveyed the alien hellscape before them. In the distance, a massive structure pulsed with sickly energy, Kralnor's stronghold. Roberts keyed his comm, addressing the surviving Allied forces. "This is it. No matter what happens, we stop that weapon. For Earth, for all our worlds, charge." With a roar, the combined forces of a dozen species surged forward, united in their desperate bid to save all of the universe from annihilation.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.